and this was used pretty much by the Knights of the Golden Circle. Each one of these locations and throughout this whole map here is a location where we know that there's a stash or close by where there's a stash. Some of these are large stash sites, others of these are small, but it gives you an indication of how many there are scattered throughout the United States. And what you're looking at is not nearly the 2,000 large stashes that I talked about. This is just the frosting on the cake, as we might say. I spent a lot of time talking about the Knights of the Golden Circle stashes and locations. Some historians and some scholars would tell you that the Knights of the Golden Circle really did not exist, that they were just a made-up group to embarrass one political party in a race against the other political party. However, the evidence is out there that with all these various stash locations and maps that we have, that the Knights of the Golden Circle was a very large organization, and it really did exist. This is a map that's typical of hundreds of maps that we have. This particular one came out of the boot of Jesse James, and it was originally folded up in the small size as you first saw. Many of the maps come in several parts, 2 or 3 parts to the map. If you lose one part, the entire map is gone. This one has a piece that's inserted in it, and it has mathematical diagrams on it that can be moved into the correct placement of the map so as to be able to use this. But this is just one of countless maps that we have, but they're all fascinating, and each map tells of a different story in a different location. I've talked a lot about the involvement of Jesse James, and he was a major part of the Knights of the Golden Circle in his later years, and eventually he became head of it. People are going to say, well, I thought he died. I thought he was shot. And this really isn't true. This newspaper account from the Lawton Constitution says Jesse James is alive in Lawton, Oklahoma. And in 1948, a man by the name of J. Frank Dalton came forward to the press and said he was the real Jesse James and set about trying to prove it. Now, this man was involved with 2 other men, Rudy Torelli and Joe Wood. Joe Wood was a newspaper reporter that had set out to discredit J. Frank Dalton and ended up by proving that he was the real Jesse James. We're going to go out to that story a little bit later on. We're also going to go out to Mrs. Torelli's Jesse James Wax Museum in Stanton, Missouri, and see a little bit about what they're doing there. Now, in a few minutes also, we're going to be talking about the classes that were held at TVE, that's Treasure Vacation Extravaganza, in spring of 1994. And when you see the classes, you'll get the complete story of the Knights of the Golden Circle. You'll find some, what we might call a typographical error if it was a book. You'll hear me call North Carolina, South Carolina, and vice versa, or the Missouri River and the Mississippi River, and a few other things like that, but I think you'll get the idea of the Knights of the Golden Circle involvements. Now, this was the story that Joe Wood wrote, and this was the story that Rudy Torelli wrote, and their involvement with these people. And we'll be getting to them in just a few minutes. In the 1960s, our government, the United States government, was afraid of a nuclear war that would shut down all of its computer systems and stop communication from one place to another. And our government began to hook computer centers together across the United States. At first, 2 or 3 that were hooked, 4 or 5 that were hooked together. And in this way, if one computer system was stopped by nuclear war, the other computer stations would take over communications so that the link would be unbroken. Gradually, more and more facilities joined this network, and you had universities coming online to it and various other facilities. That system has long passed, but it's evolved into what's called the Internet. And the Internet is a system of computer stations, large stations, clear across the United States, that link one to another. And as smaller computers call into these larger networks, they have access now to various libraries, historical societies, universities, and so forth. There's a great controversy going on about the internet. This complete system gradually got hooked with another complete system in Europe, and that system had linked France, England, Spain, various Middle Eastern. This information available through additional videos, audio tapes, pamphlets, magazine articles, books when we get to it, and whatever else we can provide. But this is a fascinating, fascinating quest of the Knights of the Golden Circle, and we invite all of you to become a part of it. I think for now, we'll go on out to our classes in Tennessee, and you'll get a first-hand look at your introduction to the Knights of the Golden Circle. Do is try and go through and give a bit of a recap, because for a lot of people, some of the things I said, I heard comments later on, it surprised them. They thought that Knights of the Golden Circle in many cases was a Jesse James associated thing, or a local thing, or a Civil War group, and most people were not aware of the fact that the whole Knights of the Golden Circle organization was international in nature. And when I started out, I think I went over that material awfully fast, and for some people there was a bit of confusion because they just mentally weren't prepared for the scope of what this organization was. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to recap some of this information in the beginning, and then move on from there and fill in some of the pieces. Were you in the classes? I can't remember. Okay. All right. What gives the Knights of the Golden Circle credibility as a group is that conditions were such in the United States that they could exist and they could begin. Now, when you're doing research on any type of a group or supposed outlaw or bandit group or pirate or whatever, and you're trying